Howdy, friends. This is Adam Ganser stopping by just to thank you so much for listening to us and all of our precious projects on the Small Beans Patreon. And if you have a couple extra bucks and haven't signed up for our $5 tier, I wanted to let you know there is some of the best entertainment anywhere on the internet just waiting for your listening pleasure. This includes episodes of I'll Show You Mine If You Show Me Yours, Spiel Boys, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and coming soon some very secret but very awesome projects we can't wait to show you. If you got the money and you feel like it, we'd sure love to have it. And thanks so much for listening to Small Beans.
Lights, camera, action! We're shooting threes, just SMB. We're gonna watch and review film trilogies. It's all for laughs, so just sit back. We're gonna drop Peladimes on this podcast.
Hey, all of our fun little friends and listeners, welcome back to Shooting Threes. I'm your goofy, silly, funny boy host, Sarah Griffith.
I don't know what to do with that. I'm
just trying a new energy here in the studio.
It's Sarah in the bridge.
Green in the morning.
Or whenever you're listening to this, because this is a podcast on the radio.
We're not live?
Unfortunately, no, we do not have that technology.
Thank fucking God. I was going to say a lot of shit.
Yeah. Well, now,
do you want to introduce yourself for real or?
I think the bridge works, but that is a Sirius XM channel, so I will say that.
Is it really? What music do they play?
Oh, it's like
Dido?
Kind of, yeah. I think it's like the coffee house channel.
Oh,
so I think you nailed it.
Like Dido is actually.
Yeah, if you go to the Dido radio on Spotify, I think that's the bridge.
Like Dido. That's the name of my Dido cover band.
Like Dido.
Like Dido.
It's like Dido, but not her. I'm Bridget.
Want to appreciate you.
We can't afford this.
For giving me. It's a parody. Such a good day.
Wait for it.
See, it's a little different.
It's a little different.
How's that for a Dido impression?
I didn't know you had that.
I've got a few.
Okay, this is
Sorry, I am on a court-ordered Celsius diet.
Bender. I would call it a bender.
A bender. Listen, either I get my pharmaceutical stimulants that are prescribed to me by a doctor, or I self-medicate and overdose on caffeine.
So
these are your options, America. If you want me to return to normal, you have to start making more ADHD medication. End the shortage.
So this will be a real loose episode as opposed to the tight ship you guys are used to hearing, but this is Shooting Threes.
Shooting Threes.
I think I'm reminding my co-host that this is Shooting Threes.
It's a basketball.
My name is Bridget.
It's a basketball podcast.
Yeah, an off-season basketball podcast.
WNBA is starting the playoffs.
Never forget.
Who you got, WNBA? I'm all in on the Liberties.
It's Liberty. 100% it's Liberty. They're unstoppable.
The Liberties.
Or the Aces. Vegas.
Well, Aces are the champions last year. Are they going to repeat?
I'm talking out of my ass a little bit because I'm a bad WNBA fan.
I'm a good WNBA fan, and I think we're right between Liberties and Aces. Could be the finals.
Let's talk about what our
Shaun
guests
of the
are
Dead
here.
is a movie by Edgar Wright.
Jesus Christ. I almost want to restart this, but I feel like it's going to be a different
loop.
Keep
all this.
No, we got it.
Listen, we had such a downer trilogy. Let's keep it light.
Yeah, I'm going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting because my co-host is on a bender.
I'm high. The Cornetto trilogy. This is Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg's. This is another unofficial trilogy where, kind of like the Vengeance trilogy, these aren't literally like, this happens, this happens, this happens. This is more like a spiritual genre. Would we say like as a genre?
Spiritual
trilogy?
I don't know, because I feel like all the movies are different. They exist in different worlds.
This is kind of it's almost a parody of a genre film, but the parody movie is maybe a genre onto itself.
It's become that. I don't know if
right.
Yeah, I think this movie came out.
Well, like I'm thinking like there's parts of this that are very reminiscent of like Mel Brooks.
Sure.
How he did the parody of the Western, the parody of the monster movie. This is kind of the parody of, it's obviously a parody of Dawn of the Dead.
Yes.
It's in the title.
Movie. Yeah, and I think they showed it to the director of Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, Bridget has all the facts on this movie. I actually remember maybe owning this movie on DVD because I remember special features from this film.
This is interesting. So, just to clarify, we are going through the Cornetto trilogy. We are
Yes.
starting with 2004's Shaun of the Dead. This is a movie. So you own this on DVD. You've seen this start to finish.
I have a memory. I don't remember owning the DVD, but I do remember going. Maybe this was like honestly a early Blockbuster DVD rental for our family.
Because my history with these movies, I think, is a little strange, and is kind of a little like time capsule of something we don't get anymore. Where I feel like I saw Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz a lot, but on cable.
Definitely.
And only on
definitely.
cable. So I don't think I've sat down and watched this movie from start to finish, or Hot Fuzz. I've seen scenes from these movies so many times and chunks of these
Sure.
movies. And that's not a thing you get anymore.
No, that's actually a dying art. And I was talking before we started recording. I actually had to rent this movie from 2 different services because one service crapped out on me. And the fact this is not available for streaming is absolutely disgusting when it is playing on Comedy Central and entertainment television right now.
Yeah, when you look this movie up to stream, if you want to watch along with us, it will tell you can buy it off Amazon and Apple TV and all these, big places.
It should be public domain. This
you
movie.
can watch it, or it's playing on the IFC channel about 17 times a day.
Yeah.
Which is why I've seen huge chunks of this movie so
Totally.
many times, but never sat down for a start to finish viewing. And I'm glad I did.
Hey,
I'm
have
glad
you
I
ever
thought-
seen Dawn of the Dead, actually? Because I realized I have actually not seen Dawn of the Dead.
I don't think I have, to be honest. This is actually sorry, Dawn of the Dead. Forget what I was just trying to say. I was going off on a tangent on a half-read fact.
Okay, well, I mean that's
That's
what
what we
all
do here.
That's what
That's
all
what we do here.
podcasts are really is a
But
tangent
yes,
on
it is
half-read fact.
it is a Dawn of the Dead.
By the way,
movie.
do you think when they were coming up with the title for this movie, like how stoked when one of them was like, "What if we called it Shaun of the Dead?"
Slam dunk.
Or do you think the title came first and then everything?
Ooh, that's a good
Because
question.
it's actually a genius title.
It works so well. That is a good question.
Because when they came up with this, they must have been like, "Ooh, yes."
Yeah. I think they probably went in knowing they'd name the character Shaun.
I mean, surely.
It's too easy. It's right
most
there.
writers like to title a movie like after the fact, or
Yeah.
like usually that comes
I think
later.
it comes either,
and
either
titling is hard.
titling is
really,
hard.
really hard to do.
I feel like you either hit a title right away before you go in and you're like, yes, that's it, or you agonize over it over months. Trying
or
to
maybe
figure
they
out,
were jokingly calling this movie Shaun of the Dead, and then it was one of those things where someone was like, "Actually,
just name your character.
that's
Shaun.
how that '70s show how that got the title."
Oh yeah, they just kept calling it.
Yeah, because everyone was like, "Oh, I really like that '70s show."
I mean, famously, the Friends titles are all like the one with
yeah, it's smart.
smart.
Yeah.
You never forget.
Anyway, so this is Shaun of the Dead.
This is Shaun of the Dead. What? How long has it been since you've seen it?
Ooh, from beginning to end, it's been many years. And yet, when I watched it, like every scene came, I was like, right, I remember this. I
Yeah.
remember this very vividly. I remember this very vividly. Is it crazy if I start this episode by saying modern masterpiece, this movie?
No.
And maybe the blueprint for all movies made since this film has released.
I mean, Edgar Wright, like this is his second movie. They made one other movie before this, super small, super cult following. I'm forgetting the name.
yeah, I have no idea.
But they made one like very, very indie, truly like scrap movie before this that got a big like cult following.
Mm-hmm.
And actually that's how they got a lot of the extra zombies, is by going on like early internet forums where
Nice.
they had this cult following and saying we're making another zombie movie. All of their extras were just like fans of their first movie, which is
I love that.
awesome.
That is
Which
really
so
awesome.
cool to see, because they, for like such a small budget indie movie,
Yeah, that's
really,
an awful lot of people.
when they are outside of the bar and you like
Yeah.
fully see the toll.
Yeah.
It's a shocking amount of people.
God, I don't even. And those are all real. There's no way
They're-
that's
no,
CGI.
no, it's
those
not.
are human beings.
Those are humans, and it's it's
My
pretty cool
God,
that those
the
are
makeup
fans.
department. They must have
Yeah, on a
hired
zombie
a
movie.
small army of
Yeah.
Sephora makeup artists.
We did a zombie parody at Cracked, and I remember our makeup artist Heather Galibo just killing it, but also, ooh, that was hard. That was hard. People were in makeup for a
Continuity.
really long time.
Yeah, and you know
Continuity
what?
is tough. She did incredible work, but
when-
she needed more hands.
Yeah, like zombie movies and zombie TV shows definitely had a moment
Yeah,
in like
they're hard to make.
Yes, absolutely. And I remember being in theater in high school and like The Walking Dead was kind of a thing. And some of my actor friends were talking about like, oh, that'd be so fun to be an extra in those movies, to get in the prosthetic, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I
No.
think it would suck horribly.
We did a sketch at Cracked. It wasn't the zombie show, but it was something else where we just needed a zombie arm to like plop up on the table. And
Yeah.
it was like, I was the arm. And I remember the makeup artist at that time telling me like, she wanted to try this like zombie type of effect on my arm that they used to do in old zombie movies. And I was like, okay, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, what the fuck? Like, I have an opinion on this.
Dude,
Yeah.
I just have to like slap my arm on a table. And it took so long. She basically like layered my arm with masking tape.
Yeah.
And just kind of like ripped at the masking tape and painted over it.
That's the thing. They build like a second layer of skin on top of you.
Yeah.
To destroy.
It's not
Yeah.
comfortable.
It's not. And
But
that,
also the zombies were pretty simple in this one. They weren't
Yeah.
they weren't over the top. They had those
which I appreciate.
I do too.
I get kind of icked out hard on like a realistic zombie.
Sure.
Like, ooh, The Last of Us. I don't
The-
like the mushroom guys.
the mushroom and
I don't like the mushroom
I
guys at
remember
all.
Shortly after The Last of Us, I ordered some dish, and whatever mushrooms it came with, it looked like The Last of Us. It looked like cordyceps. It might have been. It looked exactly like that. And I was like, I can't eat this. I'm
No.
so sorry.
There
I
was
can't-
that one episode where all the mushroom guys were running around
Yeah,
and tearing
yeah.
apart Melanie Linsky, and then the big mushroom man came
Yeah,
out of the,
the
ground.
bloater.
I don't
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, that,
I do not.
yeah, that was rough.
I don't like when a zombie is fast.
Well,
So I like this zombie speed.
I was gonna go back to like how impressive the sheer number of extras they got
Yeah.
in this small movie is, because those zombies are not. I mean, obviously, they're not particularly hard to kill. They're not fast moving zombies.
Right.
They're very like slow, stupid zombies. So what makes them scary is the sheer amount of them.
Yeah.
Is when they're truly surrounded, because you're like, you can beat up these zombies, but when they're, crowd surfing you out of a window.
Yeah, and this is in America where
Yeah.
per capita there's 15 guns
Yeah.
anywhere you might go.
And someone who knows how to shoot them.
Yeah, that was the other thing too. I was
It was
thinking
very
it was
funny.
like when they get to the gun,
He
I
was
was
so
like,
close.
I did have a moment where I was like, yeah, I mean, God, I guess you cocked the gun and pulled the trigger, but like, you can't just put a gun in my hand and I would just know.
Have you ever shot a gun?
I shot my very first gun ever, actually, the beginning of 2020.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm saying this. Like, everyone.
Well, because I'm from
Yeah.
Texas, and it
Yeah.
is like to be. So a friend of mine actually recently asked, like, no, seriously, did you grow up? I was like, absolutely
No.
not.
Both of us grew up in conservative states, but in specific cultures
in
within those
bubbles,
states.
really, where
Yeah.
I was like, no, I'm not shooting a gun.
Yeah. I had riflery at one of my summer camps. We shot guns at camp.
That's the
Which
thing.
is
When I
strange.
shot a gun, it was like a gun at a can on like a ranch.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I've
like
shot
yeah.
like at places, not at not places, at ranges.
Like ranges. Yeah,
Ranges.
Anyway,
yeah.
now who's off topic?
Now
Now we're promoting guns.
Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ. Anyway, yeah.
So the opening sequence of this movie.
I really, really appreciate they do something so interesting. Where I think all of the like classic zombie tropes of like seeing someone shuffle in, seeing the hand rise
Yeah.
out, that all comes from Simon Pegg's character. It's always Shaun that they pan up doing the classic
Yeah.
zombie thing, which I think is really, really cool. That it's always him when you see him like.
Yeah, a note I wrote down was like, this movie follows all of the genre rules perfectly. Like all of the rules of comedy they follow.
Yeah.
All of the rules of horror they follow. All of the rules of like action. Like it is just
Yeah.
such a, of all the movies that film writing professors love to like watch this, study this, blah, blah, blah.
Oh,
like,
Edgar Wright is huge.
yeah. This movie surely is like
Yeah.
canon.
I mean, Edgar Wright is so good. And I'm sure if you're a Small Beans listener, and I'm sure a Small Beans podcast going over Edgar Wright movies has talked about this. There's a great YouTube series, Every Frame and Painting, that has talked about this.
Yes.
about Edgar Wright and plenty of YouTube essays about his style. One, he's in command of it so early on in his career.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
his second movie, and he nails it. Like, there's no...
Like Spielbergian almost, and
Yeah.
then it's like, wow, you've really been operating like this forever. This is who
Because you
are.
watch like early Quentin Tarantino movies, you watch Reservoir Dogs, and you're like, okay, there's something here. It's not quite right. He gets that, like, things coming into camera in unexpected ways, like how to play that for comedy,
Right.
and that's why this like marriage of comedy and horror works so well,
Mhm.
because he uses so many horror tropes and subverts them in a funny way,
Right.
and is so smart with how he uses the camera and how he pulls people into frame that it's always unexpected. But yeah, the fact that Shaun is always the one who has those little moments where where you think it's a zombie, but then it's him.
Yeah,
And even how he moves around the world in the first act before.
definitely.
It's like he's not paying attention to all of the weird shit. He's a little bit of a zombie in that, like,
Yeah.
he doesn't look up. He doesn't know what's going on around him. He's just like staring down, like, get my Coke, get ice cream, go
Yeah.
to friend, go to work. And I think, I don't know. I mean, we're dissecting a
Yeah,
film,
I mean,
so we're gonna read.
it's like again, we talked about like okay, obviously it's a parody of Dawn of the Dead, and yet because I was saying like it is Mel Brooks-ish,
Yeah.
like it does recall
Yeah.
like a young Frankenstein
Right.
kind of like you know what this movie is, but we're gonna subvert it, whatever. But in this movie, it's like it feels like he's inventing something that we've never done before, and as a result, this movie is the blueprint for all action comedy films.
Yes.
Which is to say now every movie that is released. Because even when I watched Everything Everywhere again in theaters, the second time I saw it, I was like, oh, I forgot. There's like so much action
Yeah.
and like action comedy in this movie.
Yeah.
Like now
It's an action. Yeah.
any motion picture that you want to release has to have an element of that.
Yeah. And this movie blends them so perfectly.
Yeah.
And it works so well, and it works they use it so smartly where it's not out of nowhere. It blends in like I think the fact that Shaun is always the one who moves around like a zombie makes you feel like, oh, it makes sense that he is the one who feels most confident, and or like even if he's freaking out or flying by the seat of his pants, this seems the most instinctual to him of how to get in and out of the
I also
situation.
wrote down a note, and we'll get into this as we go on, but I wrote down a note that I think maybe this movie might be about masculinity.
Oh, really? I did write down.
We can explore this idea.
We can maybe. I do. I did write down. Men would rather survive a zombie apocalypse than go to therapy.
Yes.
Classic dunk.
Exactly.
Easy
Classic.
dunk.
Well,
That's a tagline.
it's a basketball podcast. So.
It's a basketball podcast, so
She
we
shoots, she
gotta
scores.
dunk on them.
Yeah, but so many parts of this movie I remember, but the first 20 minutes of a movie that is just kind of like establishing Shaun's life and like pre-zombie stuff. This part of the movie I'd kind of forgotten. And the movie begins with Shaun and his girlfriend Liz, and Liz is breaking up with Shaun.
Or trying to.
Trying to, right? And I just thought like, this has got to be like the strongest first 10 pages of a screenplay.
It moves so quickly.
It is a gag a minute. It
it's-
is joke, 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 joke. Set up punchline, set up punchline.
It's so tight.
It introduces all of the characters, just about. The only one I guess that isn't like literally on screen is Simon Pegg's mom, but even they kind of like make a reference to that.
Yeah, you get it. Oh, I love Bill Nighy in this movie.
Oh, yeah. And like classic like British movie where it's like actually like an extremely reputable, distinguished
It just
actor
comes in.
is like doing kind of like a funny.
Yeah, it just comes in for a bit part to play, and I'm sure
Yeah.
that was really fun for him to turn. He is so good in that car.
Yeah.
And that car scene.
Yeah.
It's so good. I'm sure we'll go into like how good the emotional beats of this movie hits.
Yes, because actually my very next line, and I wrote this within 10 minutes of the movie. Do people know that Simon Pegg is genuinely a good actor?
I mean, they knew. I think at least Edgar Wright knew.
Well, certainly, but like, I mean, like, I feel like we take maybe Simon Pegg a little bit for granted.
Maybe. I think he does.
I think now in his career, he's just kind of doing like Simon Pegg.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I mean, he has the best role in the world in those Mission Impossible movies.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
But even in the MI films, like, MI or Star Trek, like, he is kind of the designated actor in those movies
Yeah.
that has the line that's like, but seriously, people could die.
Yeah.
And he always does it with such conviction. Like there's always a beating heart in
Yeah.
every character that Simon Pegg plays. And actually at the beginning of this movie, when he's at the Winchester with his roommate and he's like emotional about his break, like,
Yeah.
I'm sure he's using a tear stick, but like, I'm with him.
He's great. These movies are clearly, I mean, he's a writer on these films.
Yeah, totally.
These movies are clearly like such a labor of love. And I think like this being some of our first introductions to Simon Pegg, he cares so much. And I feel like he puts so much care into the roles that like he always seems thrilled to be there, exactly the right choice, and puts the heart and like the fun into everything.
He's a ringer. I think
he's good every single time. His energy, you can like feed off of it. His love of the craft is palpable.
Yes.
His love of doing this in filmmaking and acting is always like in the forefront, while still pulling you into the character and into the world.
And I think it's reflected in like just his high level of commitment. No matter what the assignment is, no matter how silly the role might be, no matter how ridiculous the thing he might be saying, he's always giving it with like, no, this is dead fuck, like this is life and death.
Yeah. And I think that's where like also some of the best, certainly indie movies are made, is just like these things that these buddies wrote because they thought it was going to be fun. And, you know, filmmaking is so hard that you're going to make it good. It's not worth doing something like this if you're not trying to make it good. And I think that sense of like that indie spirit is so there in this movie, and they pulled it off so well. It's so funny. It's so thoughtful. They knew exactly what they were doing with every single beat of this movie. Yeah. And it works so well.
Yeah. So, and my note about masculinity is going to come many times, but like, okay, so top film broke up, whatever. Then we have this argument where we like the three flatmates, because we're in the UK, so we'll use the term.
Well, yeah,
flatmates. It's like, you know, Liz breaks up with Shaun because Shaun is kind of childish and he's got this roommate that's kind of a hanger-on.
Yeah.
Like basically like no sense of maturity, no sense of follow-through, bad at planning dates. The roommate also complains like this guy doesn't do fucking anything, whatever. Right. And, you know, as I was watching this, I'm like, you know, it's so interesting. So many of these comedies that I'm revisiting. As a kid, I was always like just blindly on the side of the main character.
Yes.
Yeah. And the buddy, it's like, okay, what's wrong? Like they're just having fun, whatever. And then interesting how as I've grown up, I'm like
fuck
no,
this.
Liz is right. Stay far away from this man boy. Also, evict this fucking bum loser.
God. Yes, I had that thought. Nick Frost's character for the first time in watching parts of this movie, but this movie
actually kind of frustrated me.
Annoyed me.
Like in a genuine way.
In a genuine way.
And then even Simon Pegg's character, it's like, I wrote, you talk about fumbling a bad bitch. It's like, okay, why does like Liz is like, I'm through, we're finally done, is because Shaun doesn't have the fucking foresight to just call ahead and make a reservation for a date.
Yeah.
And he can't think of anywhere else to go except for his local fucking pub.
Right. The place he wants to go and doesn't do it. Yeah. It's like clearly kind of a thoughtless deadbeat, aka
which is fine
zombie.
because that's how that's how the movie begins. So, you know, we know that they're going to go through some kind of an arc. I was funny. Like, it's funny how when I was a kid, but now, unfortunately, there are people our age
we know
that still would view this movie as like, yo, Liz is being such a bitch.
Yeah, it's kind of there are things in this movie that I also wonder if that's a product of the time, because there are definitely things in this movie that were weird that really dinged me. That I was like,
it ages really well for the most part. There's just like a couple of little lines that like probably could just be like eliminated.
Yeah, that like if you put out a new cut where.
Sure, you may want to cut.
Where Nick Frost didn't say the N-word. Nothing would change in that
I'm sorry,
movie.
that did actually make me laugh out loud. In part because I was like, this is so 2004.
Yeah.
And in a way...
No, I laughed because it was so stupid to put in that movie.
It was so stupid.
It was so dumb.
And not to defend the choice, I did laugh because I was like, you know what's funny? They don't even mean to be doing this, but yeah, this kind of character at this time in this place would use the N-word with such no regard to
2023,
what that means or what that's tied to at all.
Yeah, 2023, it was rightfully shocking, but it was still,
It kind of, and maybe I shouldn't have laughed, but I was like,
no, it was a surprise laughter because
here's the 2004 of it
I
all.
forgot about it, and it really like took me back to just hear someone say that so casually in a movie.
Yeah, but
for
again,
like not even a laugh line. It wasn't a laugh line.
Not really, but it became with time it became.
I still stand by if you just edited that part out. The movie.
Oh, he totally, absolutely.
But But Nick Frost's character, it did annoy me, and I was the whole time I was thinking, once shit pops off, he annoyed me so much when they were like trying to get out of the parents' house.
Oh my God.
I was so genuinely frustrated with that character that I was like, leave him.
Okay,
leave
so
him
this is
behind.
actually the first point I'm going to make about masculinity, right? Because you've got the three guys that live together. It's Pete, Shaun, and Ed. By the way, the fact that I know these character names just goes to show like how many times I've seen clips, because usually I don't remember.
Also, for names like Pete, Shaun, and Ed,
I suppose,
could not be more
but typically on this
names.
show, I'm like referring by actors. I don't even know the fucking name of the chick in the Fast and the Furious franchise.
Right? Yeah, Moses
or Ramses. I'm not. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah,
and I've definitely watched those movies enough.
Yeah.
But it's like, I thought, God, this is such a crux of masculinity, right? Where it's like the boy versus the man. And like, obviously a big theme of this movie and a big theme for Shaun is like, grow up.
Throughout all of these movies, that's a theme throughout the trilogy. Is like maturity and
But what I actually thought was kind of like rewarding is that like right at the top of the movie, Shaun, and this is just one example of like how different like masculine tropes come up in this movie, how relationships with men come up, where it's like, that's our boy, and from the college days we're so like,
remember that talk that they had, like, remember when he did this?
And it was like that was 5 years ago.
Yeah,
right. I thought that was like so clear. Like, right, this is exactly what we're talking about, and I don't want to use the phrase boys will be boys, but in this case I mean like the immaturity, the arrested development that some men experience, where it's like, no, come on, we're still guys, and it's like, no, you come on, rent is due, like, you know, you're hurting other people around you. But what I thought was actually kind of satisfying about the Nick Frost of it all was that like, as the movie got more real and real, as the stakes got more heightened, now, Shaun, you're understanding that, like, no, actually, having a bozo hanger-on who doesn't take any responsibility for himself, this is actually genuinely hurting you and the people around you.
Right. Yeah.
And I even thought, maybe are there some male relationships that each of us can think of that since the pandemic? Because I also was thinking, kind of interesting to see this movie after our world has gone through, like, an ending.
It is interesting that it starts as a sickness,
right, and now we're kind of like in this new like post-zombie world, if you want to think of it like that like I do see that actually, like, there's been kind of an increase in the conversations of like male loneliness, and like this is a big talking point in our culture now, is like, do men have friends? Are men making relationships with men that they're actually growing in? I think this is like, even now, like there's kind of this meme and joke about like the Roman Empire, like, boys only care about sports in the Roman Empire, but it's like, and do these boys ever grow up to be men who become fathers? Like, I think this is very culturally relevant.
I was going to bring up this point later, but it kind of, because it's about the end of the movie, but I think it fits in with what you're saying. I think the decision in this movie that I find so interesting is the decision to not kill all of the zombies and keep them around.
And I thought that ending too was like, wow, this is exactly what we've done with COVID, don't you think?
I sat on that choice after the movie ended for a long time. I thought it was like such an interesting decision, because I forgot that's how the movie ends. That they keep the zombies.
I remember
around.
they kept Ed alive in the shed, but I had forgotten about everything else.
I forgot about everything else, and I thought Ed was just like his buddy he kept alive in the shed.
Right.
But I think with what you're saying, I was like kind of sitting on this decision, and there was a lot to think about. I think it is ultimately smart, because what you're saying is that there is a world where we allow these zombie boys, these men, who just kind of go around life not
booga, jerk off, play video games, not
aware
think. I mean, this is incel culture, really. We're getting
not
into
aware.
that.
And the fact that we in this world, the choice, I was like unsure about the choice to keep them around and keep this guy in the shed, even though Pegg's character, grows up, but he still goes out and plays video games with his boy in the
In
shed.
his man cave, some would
Yeah,
say.
yeah. That I was like, I don't know what that says about Shaun at the end, which is what I was sitting
That
on.
he
but
still has that like boyhood in him.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was like, I don't know if that's supposed to be good or bad now watching this movie with how I feel about Ed and Shaun's early decision.
Yeah.
But I think it actually, as you were talking, I was like, no, that is smart because we do keep these people around.
It's definitely an outlet.
Yeah.
And I think that's fair. For the record, I think like I always say like there are different friends for different occasions, and some friends, me hanging out with them literally is going to their apartment, getting stoned and like watching things on TV. And I enjoy that quality time with that person. I just know that before I go over there, we're not going to have like any meaningful, deep emotional.
For sure. And I think it ultimately is, that is something you want to keep around. It is ultimately saying,
there is a place for it.
There's value to that friendship, but is that going to grow anywhere now? Like he's a zombie. They just play video games together.
Which
now.
is kind of like not much from what he was before, which was still kind of a zombie person.
Yeah. And so, that relationship, I guess, ends up finding its place.
Yeah. See, I also thought with keeping the zombies alive and making them work and things like that, I'm like, isn't that so our world that this horrible thing would happen?
Right.
Like this awful, violent trauma that would affect the world. People are grieving. People died. And almost as soon as that happened, we find a way to profit off of that and capitalize off of, now, wait a second, we now basically have ethical slaves.
Yeah.
So we may as well. Go for it. Yeah.
No, it's a very...
It's like how designers started to make like designer face masks in 2020.
No,
it's like okay.
That level of the decision like made total sense in my mind. I was stuck thinking about what that kind of means about Simon Pegg's character, but I think you're right. I think it absolutely works. It shows like, you have sometimes these friendships don't necessarily help you move forward. Do you need to cut those people out of your life? No. If they bring you joy and like you
it's
like
about balance.
and you
it's
like
always
their
been about balance.
Yeah, but he's able to, put that away, move forward with his life and maintain his relationship with his friend, but not let his friend,
Yeah. And
put him in this
instead of talking about
arrested
masculinity, I also want to talk about David, the
boyfriend.
Dawn's boyfriend. I know that
Dawn is going to be hard for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always going to call her Dawn from The Office.
From The
Which,
Office.
by the way, Martin Freeman also has a nice little appearance in this movie.
Well, he's in these movies.
He is, yeah. But in this movie, he's just there.
He's there.
And I did write down, I'm like,
loved that. I love the parody people. I wish there was ever a movie about her journey.
Yes. I talk about like, we don't need another reboot sequel. No. I want to
see what Yvonne did that day. Yeah.
Love her.
Yeah.
I did write down, I'm glad The Office US and UK gave all of those actors like a few years where it's like, be in every movie.
Yeah.
Free for all. Come on now. Get out of the paper company and come on and get in a movie.
Yeah.
But David also being like another prick. Where it's like, on the one hand, he's kind of like the opposite tail
end
where
of
like
the spectrum. Yeah, where
he's all business, no play.
Right.
And actually like
turned him into a real prick.
Right. And at the climax, talk about men would rather go to therapy.
Right.
Men would rather be a zombie than go to therapy or whatever. That it's like, but you see there's something that Shaun actually, why he is kind of like our main guy compared to all these other men, is that like, we see Shaun cry. We see the stakes. We see him fuck up. We see him try to be a better person. If you notice the thing he writes down himself, like at the top of the movie before he passed out drunk, before like the full zombie apocalypse, it's like win over Liz, pick up mom, get shit together. And he does manage to do all those things.
Yeah. Well, Shaun, I mean, at the end of the day, we talk about him, being a zombie in the middle of the movie and throughout. One of my favorite shots of this movie is when he catches the chips that David's thrown out, and it's just the hand that sticks out, and he catches the chips. I love that shot, but that was
crisps.
Chris, sorry,
Bridget, come on.
Sorry, I'm gonna try to stick in it.
Yeah,
but Shaun. We talk about him being a zombie, but he has I mean, we see his emotional arc throughout it, but even when he is in the state of arrested development, he's a very like emotional person. He's very nostalgic. He wants to keep his friend around because he's provided him with all these good times. He wants to be in this relationship.
He's got a big heart. Like, he
He's
really
got a
does
big
love
heart,
the
and
people in his life.
Yeah, and he doesn't want to shut that part of himself off just to be a quote unquote adult. Where David, and I'm sure, like, just like we know people like Ed who are in the state of arrested development and can kind of drag people down, you know, people like David who are so obsessed with being an adult and doing things the right way and settling down and taking care of yourself that they lose. And they're a zombie in a different way. They lose all sense of...
I was just about to say, it's a zombie. You just don't have your sense of humanity.
Right. You lose all sense of yourself in order to, like, fulfill these expectations, and you lose your wants, and you're just like, well, I'll go with this person's friend because this person rejected me.
Also, like, the hyper masculinity of, like, I've got the gun. I'm going to shoot her. I'm going to, you know, I'm going to break it, which, like, oh my God, his whole, like, breaking the window to get in the bar. It's like, you're literally the fucking stupidest person alive. But like, isn't that so like a toxic masculine trait to be so like, decisions after me right now. I'm doing it. And violence. It's going to be violence. And it's going to be very first thought. And it's like, why don't you just like take a deep fucking breath and think about.
Yeah. Well, he was so stuck in he wanted to stay in the flat. He wanted to hunker down. He wanted to be in a place where he had total control and didn't want to have to make those fast decisions and have his view of masculinity be put to the test. And when it is, he makes some of the worst decisions in the movie.
Which I think so many hypermasculine men.
Yeah. Or people who
that's
have
the case. Like, they actually, like, it's like they're performing masculinity.
Well, yeah, because they have this playbook of how it's supposed to go in their mind and what they're supposed to do. And when you actually have to think with your heart or think with your feet or make intuitive decisions, you're not prepared for that because you've been going by this textbook the whole time.
Right. Meanwhile, Shaun is just kind of like, I don't know, let's just do our best. Which, by the way,
I played video games. I've seen this.
Right. And by the way, I know a lot of guys do listen to this podcast. No, really. Let's take the lesson we take away from Shaun is that you really don't have to be the perfect man. No. You don't have to be Mr. Masculine, Mr. Body, Mr. Face, Mr. Money, Mr. Ideas, whatever. Yeah. But it was always the effort that Liz wanted to see.
It was always,
and look at the spectacular effort Shaun goes through to keep everyone alive and well, and the care and concern and the love and affection that he gives to everybody is more valuable. The effort and the intention there is more valuable to Liz and us as the audience than anything else these other men provide.
I mean, it's shown so well in that scene in the basement of the bar when he quit smoking. She didn't even care that he quit smoking. She wanted to smoke. It was just the fact that he hadn't smoked for a day because she yelled at, like, she broke up with him.
Yeah.
But he hadn't smoked for a day. He tried, and she's like, well, you tried, so fuck it, let's have a cigarette. It's the end of the world.
Right.
It was just that effort. It's shown. It's on display throughout the movie.
Women know not to ask for too much from men.
We're aware.
The bare minimum you can show is just some kind of effort that, like, you care and like you've thought about somebody other than yourself. Because that's the other thing too about Ed and David. Either end of that spectrum, they're just selfish. Those characters are selfish.
Right. And like in David's case, like, maybe he does plan a date and maybe he is going to go out, but it's
not to service her, it's to service him.
No, it's to get
his desire to like conquer a woman that he's always wanted,
and get his good
boy
points or whatever it is.
Anyway,
it's so well done. I want to talk about the scenes. The scene with his mom.
That is a scene I have. Whenever I think of this movie, I always think about. Are you talking about when she becomes his, like, when it like becomes clear that
Also, it was like the decision. So one, just an incredible scene when she becomes a zombie in that fight between David and another just like lack of emotional intelligence from David, who's supposed to be this like
Mr. Man
who's doing everything right. It just goes to shoot his mom thoughtlessly. How that resolves, though, every time I've seen that scene, which is so good. Her performance is so good. Simon Pegg's performance is absolutely heartbreaking.
Again, Simon Pegg is like really giving a good acting performance in this movie.
He's so good. That scene I'm not a movie crier, so crying is not. But like it got me. It warmed.
It really,
It gets you. It gives you the hot flash of crying.
Yeah, it does. That's a good way
for
to put
sure.
it. Yeah.
Every time. But yeah, I was talking to my boyfriend when we watched this. I was like, I would still have my friend shoot her though.
Yeah.
When he gives a gun to Shaun, I was like, I'd still be like, you
There's
do
something
it.
very old yeller about that.
Yeah, I'd still be like, please do this for me. I
Yeah.
can't shoot my mom in the face, even though she's not my mom.
Yeah.
Still would give the gun to my friend.
Yeah, no, that is always the part of the movie that I think about. And then actually after that though, I had remembered like the scene of them in the cellar, but that was actually very affecting to me now
Yeah.
when Liz is like, how many shells do we have left? And he says, we've got 2.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, we could just shoot them 2. We can at least shoot 2 of them. And Liz is like, I wasn't talking about them. And Simon's
Yeah.
like, I know you weren't. And like, I don't know. I had known that about that scene, but I thought that was also such a tasteful way of like,
Yeah.
the movie does a really good job of like being funny, being light, being adventurous, but like here as the second act turns to the third,
Right.
there's a real weight
and
gravity to the situation.
the stakes of the movie.
People have
yeah.
died now. People are dying. Ed is dying in real time.
Most people are zombies.
Yeah.
We watched like 3 of his loved ones die.
Yeah.
He's dealt with the trauma of that all fucking day.
And I will say,
and he's just been carrying on. He's been the decision maker of this group,
Yeah.
the leader, the people. Everyone is turning.
well,
to
I like
him.
that line where he says, you know what? It's kind of been enough to shoot my flatmate and my mom
Right.
in the same day. So I don't think that I could kill my girlfriend on top of that.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. We're at this point of our
Yeah.
zombie journey, but like, I don't know how much more bullets I can put into people I love.
Yeah.
I will say, Judd Apatow is about to catch some fucking strays from me.
Oh boy.
Because Judd Apatow does this with his comedies too, where like as the second act turns to the third, it kind of takes like a more serious tone.
Yeah.
But usually when that happens in a Judd Apatow film, I'm like, no, go back to being funny. I don't want
Yeah.
to see this. I
Well,
don't
yeah.
care.
Well, Judd Apatow movies also the stakes are never really.
Well, I mean,
that
it's
high.
not as life and
Yeah.
death as it is here.
Yeah.
But it is like we get to a point of the conflict where it's like, okay, now we have to become a serious movie. And I feel like with Judd Apatow, he pivots so hard to drama
Yeah.
that I literally do find myself thinking, oh, I wish this movie was like funny again, like it used to be.
I will also say it's a problem. I mean, I grew up on those Judd Apatow movies. It's
Totally,
informed so
totally.
much. So I do say this all with a grain of salt. But his movies, his comedies that we grew up with were never cinematically interesting in the way that an Edgar Wright movie
And
is.
this is where that every frame of painting,
and
every
yeah,
frame of painting.
So
yeah.
I do think when it stops being a comedy in a Judd Apatow movie, you're kind of left with like this drama that isn't that cinematically interesting.
And it's
stakes
like
are-
an hour of drama. It's
and
not
it's
like the
all- and
last
it's all-
20 minutes.
and
It's like the
this
last.
movie is tight. This movie
Yes.
is not very long. It's
Thank you, God.
Yeah. It's tight, and then you're also still left with like something that is unexpected. Like in this movie, in Shaun of the Dead, in an Edgar Wright movie, in the third act, when that does happen, you are left with something you're still unexpected. You still don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
You don't know how they're going to get out of the situation. You're still invested in other things besides the joke machine of it all, which is a well-oiled joke machine.
Yeah.
But you're still invested for other reasons besides that. And I think in a Judd Apatow movie, when it flips, you're like, oh well, it's a man-child who is having trouble and now
Almost
he needs to
always.
learn to grow up, which is the same in this
Yeah.
movie. But like the stakes are higher. There are interesting things happening on
I will
screen.
also say, yeah, I also think, and correct, like, I want to hear your opinion about this, but I also feel like Judd Apatow doesn't really care about characters that are likable. I think oftentimes he is like writing about characters that are not likable people,
yeah,
which is true to life, of course, versus like an Edgar Wright. And I think this is really also to the credit of Simon Pegg, because Simon Pegg is the star of so many of these movies I'm
Sure.
talking about, where it's like Simon Pegg just himself is so likable. But also I get the vibe that like, I don't know if it's necessarily Wright or Pegg or it's both at the same time. It's like, but these characters are kind of likable. And then the ones that aren't likable die.
I think I think it's a combination. One, I think it's that heart I was talking about earlier. That Simon Pegg wrote this movie with his buddy. He cared a lot. There's a lot of care in these characters.
Definitely. This is a labor of love.
Yeah. And I think in like I'm thinking of like an I Love You Man, they're more caricatures. They're bigger sketches of a man.
Well, they always seem like caricatures of people that Judd knows in real life, if not himself.
Right. It's yeah. So I think there's less pathos inherently in that maybe. Or I mean, I get maybe more. These characters, the Edgar Wright characters feel a little more nuanced. In their hero's journey.
Yeah.
There's a little bit more going on. This movie works on a lot more levels than a Judd Apatow movie
Definitely
does. So the character arcs feel a little more satisfied. Again, the movie is a little more unexpected, but the character arcs also end up feeling a little more satisfied because it works on different levels, except for just surface of man boy having to grow up to deal with pregnant girlfriend or best man or wedding or what have you.
Yeah.
So yeah, when Simon Pegg does learn these lessons and does have these like sincere emotional moments where he's trying to save the people he loves, it hits you so much more effectively because you know he has this big heart. You know he has this Ed side of him, this big like I do what I want because I love these things.
Right.
But also this, David middle ground that he needs of like, no, here are the things I do for these people and I'm trying and maybe it's not working, but I'm trying and I love these people, and all that conflict is happening in that character in a very visceral moment.
Well, and talking about Edgar Wright keeping it tight. Again, I didn't rewatch this for this, but I've never forgotten that Every Frame of Painting episode about Edgar Wright and his directing style. I mean, it's a point well made because we're talking about like it's tight. Yeah. Wright and Pegg, they don't waste a fucking second
of screen time.
This is another kind of like, I don't know why I've decided to compare this to Judd Apatow films. I just feel like growing up, I watched a lot of Edgar Wright and Judd Apatow. So like this is where this compare. It's not 1-to-1, but they come to mind as contemporaries
like
in my mind.
Big comedy filmmakers of the early 2000s.
Exactly. Yeah. And what I will admire, especially about this movie, is that there's not too much of like character exposition.
No,
there's a few, like we see Ed and Shaun kind of get into it as they're trying to break into the Winchester a little bit. Again, there's a moment between like Liz and Shaun where they talk about the end of the world, but there's no big scene where Shaun is like, you know what, this whole time I've been, but there's not a lot of that. It's like we see it, we don't have to hear it.
Edgar Wright is maybe the master in comedies of show don't tell.
Yes.
Everything is seen. You like between the interaction of the character and between his fun visual tricks in the camera and how he has in his blocking and how he has a camera move and stuff like that. It's all crystal clear without having to say it. I think maybe even a better comparison from Judd Apatow would be like an Adam McKay movie. Where
those are movies that really do get to a point where I'm like, please be funny again.
Yeah, I mean, but I even think of his more like character driven zany movies.
Sure.
Where like those are so fun, and they're some of the movies.
Oh, the McKay Farrell collection
movies are like the movies I quote and think about, and inform so much of my sense of humor. But again, they don't have the storytelling level of this that makes it so rewatchable and such a like concise, clear masterpiece of a movie where like, yeah, Anchorman's a fucking classic. I will watch Anchorman every single chance I get. I love that movie. But is it from like a script perspective, a just pure storytelling perspective, the most compelling movie of all time that I don't like get a little bored of during a rewatch because I'm just waiting for my favorite line to come up.
In between Veronica breaking up with Ron and then the zoo.
Yeah.
There is, thank God there's that Jack Black scene on the highway. Thank God. Thank God. There is, Anchorman's one top 5 favorite movie, but there is a part in Anchorman where I'm like,
I'm just waiting
for 15, I'm just waiting for the panda to start giving birth.
Right. I'm waiting for my favorite parts to come up.
Right.
And everything in this movie, you're invested in the movie the whole time because the storytelling is working on so many great levels.
And
the
talk about like
tight, it's smart, it's fun,
and the directing of it
The
all.
directoring
The directoring
is
and this is something that
unparalleled.
every frame talks about, but like, and I really
I
see
think
it in
it's
this,
every frame. I hope it's every frame.
it is. It definitely is, because I had never thought about this before, and this like opened my eyes to this, and I really saw it in this movie, where other movies, and this is the hard part about writing. I was thinking about like we were trying to write a New Love episode,
Yeah.
where we were following Sarah like on a night out, and so
Right.
we kept having to be like, well, how does she get from this place to this place?
Yeah.
And eventually we scrapped that whole script because we realized we were just like, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this
Right.
happens.
We call
And
it.
we were
yeah.
fighting so hard to like, well, what motivates Edgar Wright? It's like, oh man, we're at the bar. Should we get drunk? Sure. Clip, clip, clip. Boom, they're drunk. Like
Yeah.
there are so many parts. Oh, I gotta go upstairs and pee. Okay, shot of bathroom, shot of washing hands, mirror. Like
Mirror gag.
there are
yeah.
so many times that like as a writer, it's like you could get stuck, hung up on the fucking detail of like,
Right.
well, how do they go from this place to this place? Or, well, what's a fun way storytelling wise say the two of them get drunk at the bar? Here's a fucking idea. We'll just put in like the fastest montage of your life where
Yeah.
we show 2 seconds of a frame here, frame there.
Yeah.
And this is a Wright signature. We see this all the time.
Yeah.
But it keeps
He
keeps
paces his movies.
it keeps the pace up. It keeps the stakes high. It keeps the energy going.
It keeps the movie
and
tight.
it's a perfect example of like show don't tell, where it's like, right, instead of like, and I think every frame uses this example of like, well, how do you show a character moving from one state to another?
Yeah.
In Brides, like Paul Feig, it'd be like a montage, there'd be a music break.
Right.
It really wouldn't be a time for jokes. It'd just be like maybe 60 seconds of visually seeing like boxes put in the back of the car, blah, blah, blah. Edgar Wright does all that in seconds.
Yeah.
Just because it's like boom, boom, boom. Then we're at point A to point B. That's all you need to know.
In screenwriting school, as I push up my glasses up the bridge of my nose,
Please.
we always referred to this as and then storytelling as opposed to storytelling.
I've seen
so-
a clip of one of the South Park guys talking
about this. So, and then you think of a little kid, a 4-year-old, telling you a story about what happened in their day,
Right.
and they're like, and we went to the playground, and then we slid on the slide, and then we play tag, and that's not how a story like you want to kill yourself
Right.
by the end of a 4-year-old telling you a story like that, because you're like, none of these things are motivated. When an adult, or someone who, not even an adult, not all adults can do this, but
Right.
when
Good
someone who-
storytelling.
when good storytellers do something, everything is motivated. So you don't get from point A to point B by saying, and then you did this, so this happened.
Yeah.
So that happened.
Mind you, on the
Right.
meantime, this was going on unbeknownst to me. And then
Right.
because of that,
it's cause
yeah,
and effect
yeah.
every single time. And then every scene is motivated. There's a reason something happens. Every single scene has a point to it. That's not just joke. It's also story moving along. Plus we insert like mirror gag, which tells you something about the story
Yeah.
too. It sets tone, it sets character, it
And,
sets
and,
plot.
and this is a great example. This movie is like a great example of like everything we're talking about, of course, but it's like, right, like we have like the interpersonal conflicts, and then every once in a while it's like, wait, zoom out. There's like zombies
These outside, yeah.
so like they keep the circumstances alive well, they keep the interpersonal. I mean,
Right. Everything keeps
kind of
moving. Everyone's
easy-
working together.
Yeah, I
It's
think it's-
perfect gears turning with
Yeah,
each other.
and
Yeah.
on the one hand, like I always say for actors, like it's easy to act when the stakes are high. Like I think
Yeah.
it's so easy to do a scene where it's like, my husband just died,
Sure.
or like, I'm so mad at you. Like, I think it's so much harder to act like a nothing scene, like where your emotions aren't at 8, 9, 10, but they're maybe closer to like 2, 3, 4.
Sure. Yeah.
And
It's the subtle moments.
and even though the stakes are so high, like it's already such a gift for these actors and for like the storytelling that
Right.
like it's the end of the world and like you couldn't think of higher stakes. They keep such a nice job of keeping like the interpersonal stuff
Yeah.
alive as well and keeping it as important as the zombie business.
It's what makes the relationships feel real and what makes the world feel so lived in. That these moments between these characters are so well established and they have such a rapport and it's at such an ease. Yeah, I really like these movies. Every time I have produced a movie, like especially with a comedy director, and that's why I appreciate Abe and Swaim so much. Shout out to Abe and Swaim.
Shout out.
Because they know this so well, but it is the Judd Apatow effect of comedy a little bit, where where you're making a comedy so you don't necessarily think about it being cinematic. You don't think it needs to have these like higher brow entrances and you don't think you need to think about how the camera works in a comedy, but it elevates the story and the there's so many more jokes you can get in when you move the camera and you block effectively. You get your audience so much more connected to a story, and then the jokes become funnier and easier to make when you're like, so when the world is so lived in and you can connect so well. And I think for a while we were forgetting that about comedy. We were placing the camera in the medium and letting it go.
This is why so many SNL characters that have then gone on to make their own movie fails horribly because it's like not good. It's a motion picture, not a 90-minute sketch.
Right. Yeah.
I could write 100 sketches today.
Right. And SNL,
one full-blown comedy motion picture that would take me my entire life.
And the digital shorts have taken off so much.
Yeah.
Because they are visually interesting. They've stepped up their game. It's not like it takes you out of the world of a sketch, which, they're filming a live sketch show that's, you put the cameras where the cameras have to go and you do the sketch.
Sure.
But
it's
like watching
Bill
sketch.
Hader and Fred Armisen, I mean, now they have documentary now, but those started off as digital sketches. But again, back to parody. We, the audience, know these visual cues. So we already tropes. Bring, and Edgar Wright does all the zombie tropes. Again, he follows all of the rules of all of the genres that this movie is covering. And I don't know how you felt, but at the beginning, every little micro zombie movie beat, I'm like, oh, yes, it's fun. I'm like, oh my God, yes, this is what zombie movies do. It gets you into it.
It gets you excited to see, because I think he knows this. The fun part about a parody, especially a zombie or a horror movie parody, horror comedy parody, you're excited. It starts off, even horror movies start off as the first act is this fun, lighthearted, kids at college or at a party.
I mean, Jordan Peele.
Yeah.
I mean, this is where his success is so great because it's
you're it's the anticipation. That's what makes horror movies scary in part, the first act fun. Is you're waiting for shit to come off. You have this happy scene at summer camp and you're waiting for the killer to come out. And when you know it's coming, when you have a parody movie like this, knowing these scenes and having these little tropes come up that you're like, oh, here it is. No, something different. He plays with it in such a fun, clever way that makes you so excited to keep watching the movie.
God, I feel like we're gushing as if we've never watched an Edgar Wright movie.
Yeah.
I will say, unfortunately,
it's fun
Edgar
to
Wright,
talk about them.
Yeah, Edgar Wright has amassed a certain fanboy that definitely, at a saturation level, is excruciating.
Sure. Most good movie, a lot of good movies.
And you know what? I'm actually glad you want to bring this up because I want to bring up the fact that this movie is the blueprint to so many movies. And almost watching it now, it suffers kind of the same thing that happens when I watch Jaws.
Right.
Where when one movie is such a touch point for every other filmmaker that when you go back to revisit almost the source, there are something there are certain aspects of this movie that Edgar Wright didn't invent. Right. But I think for a 21st century movie audience, whatever, there's so many scenes that I'm like, God, every Marvel movie has this scene in it. And again, Edgar Wright is not the genesis of some of the stuff that I'm talking about.
No, but he helped bring it to the mainstream.
But I definitely feel for the 21st century, this is maybe one of the most influential movies that has come out.
It's really good. We are gushing, but also, what are you going to say? Did you think we were going to come in and we were going to hate these movies?
Yeah, it's been so long, truthfully, since I've revisited that I was like, well, let's see now that we live in this world that we live in.
It's been so long. I've seen, watching it, I was like, I wonder how much of this movie I missed just watching it on cable. And I did see most of it. They're beginning and end, might have missed a few scenes watching on cable. Certainly some of the more problematic lines didn't come up on cable.
Sure.
But it was just such a joy to watch from start to finish that I'm a little mad at myself that I didn't seek it out when I was like, oh, this movie's good on cable. Let me start to finish.
Yeah, you know what?
It works really so well.
It works well together. And that's the thing. I some of the sheen has kind of come off this movie for me because again, this is something that's the last 30 minutes, especially when you're flipping through channels and it's I just need to kill 20 minutes before the show I actually want to watch starts. And
it's
we're talking. By the way, what we're talking about right now is like a dying art. Like this is.
I know, but there are so many movies that I've seen out of order or just snippets of that I love, and it's made the movie better for me. Lucky Number 11 is a movie I'm thinking of that I only saw in chunks on cable, and it is one of my family's favorite movies. I don't think we've ever watched it full. I don't think it's probably as good as I think it is in full. This movie definitely suffered from me watching only in snippets. I'm glad I revisited.
Well, only in snippets, I'm like, yeah, I get it, and then I know this happens. Like,
Right,
this is a pretty
exactly.
good
That's
scene,
how
but
I
like
felt like-
watching it all together, because again, talking about how good of a screenplay it is,
yeah,
the
need it all
Shaun
together.
arc is really nice to watch.
You need it
And
all together.
actually,
for it to fully
with
work.
modern eyes, post-COVID, midst incel culture, whatever. Like again, shockingly relevant. There are just some little notes I wrote down. I was like, turning on the local news to get exposition and information about the
classic.
like. I feel like that's a dying. Like you can't
I
use that
re-
anymore.
really,
of like the
yeah.
character turning the TV on.
I guess it would be like a Twitter
Yeah,
notification on your
it would
phone.
be like a social media tweet, whatever.
Yeah, I like the way they did it where you didn't watch like a full newscast. I like their snippets.
So, and again, another Edgar Wright subversion where it's like,
montage.
the trope of the character sees the TV. It's like, wait, what's going on? Wait, we're interrupting this broadcast, but like, here's like a fun way. And like, this is true to the Shaun character that he wouldn't fucking stop and watch the news just because something was like, whatever. Like, this is 2003. Something was breaking news.
And how the lines
in the world
work when he's
everywhere.
flipping through the channels is so good. When I watched it on cable, it was just like Joke Machine. And I got the jokes and I thought they were funny and I thought it was fun to watch. And I knew, like, I went to film school. I watched that Every Frame of Painting. Like, I knew that this was a better story than maybe I thought if I watched it start to finish. But yeah, it really just works so well on so many different levels. Hot Fuzz, I kind of did the same thing with. Hot Fuzz is, I feel like, even more of a joke machine.
Yeah.
It made me excited to sit down and watch that one start to finish. I did see At the World's End from start to finish. That is the only one I've seen.
And I don't think I've
before.
seen the movie at all.
That's the only
actually.
one out of this trilogy that I've seen before, like in a theater, start to finish.
Wow. Yeah.
Weirdly
I don't think I
enough,
saw
and
that.
everything else I
at
saw
all.
on cable, like 98% of it on cable.
Yeah.
But yeah, great movie. I'm so glad we're doing this because I'm so glad I get to like revisit. And
Yeah,
sit down
you know
and
what?
watch these,
Actually, like to pull the curtain back, I was like, I don't know, we need another trilogy. We should do a comedy one. Like we could do the Cornetto. Like people want us to do that. Like, oh, why not? Now I'm like, I am so fucking glad I have been given
good
permission
call, audience,
to watch
to
these
revisit.
movies.
Yeah.
From top to bottom,
Also,
because
'cause
frankly, I've kind of taken these movies for granted.
For sure, because we've seen them so much, because they are constantly on cable.
And because every movie that comes out now is trying to capture this plus Spielberg Buster plus like Tarantino, like
there is a
twistedness.
forgotten magic where like some movies were made better by constantly playing on cable. I think this one, it kind of hurt it where it got oversaturated.
Yeah.
Sitting down and revisiting these movies after years of not watching them and like having to think about them.
The hype is real.
They're great. They're so great. I'm so excited to do the rest of this series. Thank you, audience, for
okay. Closing thought as we're wrapping up here.
Yeah.
If somebody was like, we need to evacuate and like shelter in place,
this is an important part.
and someone's idea was like, let's go to the local pub, abso-fucking-lutely I'd go.
Yeah.
Yes!
No, that
realistically, I'd probably shelter in place in my own home. But if that like quickly was like not really becoming a feasible option.
Right. Because at some point.
Yeah, I'm going to the pub.
Yeah, because at some point, it's clear he was right. Like, no, the TV doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. Like, we need to go somewhere else. They're going to find us. Because, the longer they waited in the flat, the more the walls were going to close in on them.
Right. And it kind of seems like an unofficially spoken rule of this universe is like once one zombie knows, it's kind of like The Last of Us where they're all connected.
Hive mind. Yeah.
Yeah. But when I just thought about that when he was at Liz's flat with her flatmates. And David was like, we're not going to the pub. What the I'm like,
pub's a great place.
First of all, the pubs in the UK, in England, those pubs are like 1,000 years old.
Right.
Like, those are made of stone.
They're fortresses. There are plenty of rooms to hide in.
Cellars.
It's cellars. It's dark, if you weren't an idiot about it.
Also, if I am just kind of like waiting for my death.
Windowless. Pretty windowless.
And then when they're like, oh, we may as well like pour a pint. David's like, is this what we really want to do right now? It's like, That is
else are you gonna
exactly
do?
what the fuck I would do right now.
What else are you gonna do when everyone
The
else?
Simon Pegg plan of like, we're just gonna grab everybody, go to the Winchester, and have a pint and wait till
Right.
it all clears over. I'm like, that is how I survived 2020.
Right, and he kept trying to think like 7 steps ahead. Like, what is your plan? Yeah, there is a little bit of food here, and that's helpful. What are you gonna do when you ran out of food at your flat? Yeah, idiot.
Yeah,
Go to the pub. Have a pint.
a pint.
Have a pint.
And wait
that's
till it all
I-
blows over.
and wait till yeah, I love that moment. They're like, I want a vodka, and he's like, yep.
Oh, hot. Yeah.
What else are you gonna
once I
do?
got all settled in, it's like, well, I think I'll pour myself a pint. I'm like, yeah, fuck,
Yeah,
yes.
what else are you gonna do?
The fuck?
If your plan is to just wait it out in a safe place, it's
Which
a hurt.
again, that is what I did in 2020. I waited it out in a safe place, and
And
guess what I did in that time?
drank a lot.
Drank.
A lot. Yeah.
Fuck me. I mean, what else?
I mean,
you gonna do?
hurricane parties. Storms
Exactly.
coming. You drink.
And if I've learned anything about crazy survival stories from the Titanic to 9/11 and everything in between, the people that got drunk were the people that survived.
You know, loosens you up.
This is unfortunately why so many drunk drivers get in accidents, and they're the motherfuckers that wind up walking away
Yeah.
because their body's all loosey-goosey, feeling weird and warm. Yeah, listen, getting drunk or getting a little bit of a drink in you, not a bad way to survive an incident.
And so now you know Sarah and I's plan when shit goes down.
We're
gonna have a point.
This is a plan I've already implemented and have already survived from, so
Yeah.
it will remain
Have a point.
my plan until
Yeah.
otherwise. Although I have thought in that opening sequence when he's hungover and he's like shuffling to the corners,
Yeah.
I laughed because I was like, yeah, if I was that hungover going to my corner store for something, there could be. I really would be like, guys,
Yeah.
I'm not even looking up
Yeah.
at you right
Oh
now.
yeah. I've had those
And
moments.
every time I've had a nasty hangover, I have thought, and if the big one were to hit California right now, I don't even know. I'd just be like, all right, fine.
Take me.
Like, fuck
Take me.
me. Yeah.
Take me into the earth.
Anyway, that's Survival 101.
Yeah. Next month, Hot Fuzz.
Yeah, next is Hot Fuzz.
Super excited about
I've been
that
Sarah
one.
Griffith. You can find me on... I don't even want to promote my Twitter anymore, really.
You don't have to.
Yeah, just Instagram at Sarah Griffith. We post everything there. We also are using at Rough Stuff Pod. We're thinking of a new name for that to become like our catch-all
Our
for
catch-all.
podcasts.
So yeah.
But stay
for
tuned.
now,
I'm also on TikTok. I've been starting to promote this actually now
Do
at
it.
SK_Griffith. It's mostly baseball content. It's baseball vibes.
baseball vibes.
If you care about like the American League West, follow me there. I don't know. Bridget, you want to plug?
Yeah, I mean, stay tuned to Small Beans. We got exciting stuff in the works.
Absolutely.
As you know, if you listen to this podcast, you can follow me on Twitter at Bridget Tweets. You can follow me on Instagram at Bridget_Greenberg. I'm not much of a poster, but sometimes
We'll
I'm
post
doing.
episodes. I mean,
Yeah.
if only that. We'll post episodes
Well,
and things that we're working on. Bridget and I
Yeah.
are also writing a show,
Yeah, Nulo, which you
series,
mentioned. Yeah.
which is at Bad Collab Productions, or is it
Yes.
Bad Collab Prod on Instagram?
I think it's productions.
If you type
I
in
don't do the
Instagram,
Instagrams.
if you type on Instagram at Bad Collab PROD,
It's gonna come
something
up.
will come up. That's where you can check out New Low, which again is something Bridget and I are writing and I'm starring in. This is
That's-
our Peg and Wright
This is us.
venture.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that.
Yeah.
I think
All right.
we've plugged.
I think we've plugged, and I think we can.
Thanks to the
go
patrons.
right
So
now.
thanks for everyone
Thank
who
you, guys.
suggested this. We love it.
Yeah.
We're shooting threes, just SMB. We're gonna watch and review film trilogies. It's all for laughs, so just sit back. We're gonna drop hella dimes on this podcast.